OpenAI has just come up with a model named OpenAI O1. It's a new language model which is trained with reinforcement learning to perform complex reasoning. So what is reasoning in the first place? Let's hear from OpenAI themselves.
So what is reasoning anyway?
So one way of thinking of reasoning is that there are times where we ask questions and we need answers immediately because they're simple questions. For example, if you ask what's the capital of Italy, you know the answer is Rome and you don't really have to think about it much. But if you wonder about a complex puzzle, or you want to write a really good business plan, you want to write a novel, you probably want to think about it for a while. And the more you think about it, the better the outcome. So reasoning is the ability of turning thinking time into better outcomes.
And they add that O1 thinks before it answers, and it can produce a long internal chain of thought before responding to the user. So the key contribution becomes the chain of thought process. So let's look at the chain of thought. What they've mentioned is that similar to how humans may think before responding to a difficult question, O1 uses chain of thought when attempting to solve a problem. And it leverages reinforcement learning, and O1 learns to hone its chain of thought and refine the strategies it uses. It learns to recognize and correct its mistakes, and it can even break down tricky steps into simpler ones. Like that's similar to how we sort of deal with engineering problems. And it learns to try a different approach when the current one isn't working. It's kind of like it steers itself in the right direction of the answer. And they are saying that this process dramatically improves the model's ability to reason. And to demonstrate the ability to reason, they've shown the performance of OpenAI O1 against the GPT-4o, and they have compared it in a number of benchmarks such as coding, math, English, science, safety, and health science. So let's go through some of them. So before we jump into different examples, let's have a look at one of the examples shared by OpenAI on X. So we ask a complex puzzle which says a princess is as old as prince, and it goes on and on. So unlike GPT-4, it now says thinking, and it shows that for a while, and then it's translating the problem, and then it's defining variables, and then it's figuring out equations, equating future ages. It's just showing us what exactly is going through behind the scene, or it's just giving a summary of the chain of thought process that's going through behind the scenes. So who is this model for? These enhanced reasoning capabilities may be particularly useful to tackle complex problems which usually occur in science, coding, mathematics, and similar fields. It can be used by healthcare professionals or researchers to annotate cell sequence data, or by physicists to generate complicated mathematical formulas. In general, it's in a field that involves complicated thinking or complicated data that actually needs quite a bit of reasoning. So we are getting closer to more complex problems rather than just answering something like, what's the capital of Italy? In terms of how it works, all that they say is that they train these models to spend more time thinking through the problem before they respond, much like a human would do. Through the training, they learn to refine their thinking process, try different strategies, and recognize their mistakes. And what they say next is quite impressive. What they say is that the next model update performs similarly to a PhD student on challenging benchmark tasks in physics, chemistry, and biology. They also found that the model excels in math and coding. When it comes to the International Math Olympiad, GPT-4o only solved 13% of the problems, but this reasoning model, note that they're calling this model a reasoning model, and it can score 83%, which is a huge leap compared to the GPT-4o model, which just does 13%. And they also simulate the code forces competition, which we will have a look at when we look into the coding example. They're also saying that because this is an early model, it doesn't have many features that make up ChatGPT, like browsing the web and uploading files and images. But they're saying that those will be the capabilities in the near term. For complex reasoning, this is a significant advancement and representation of a new level of AI capability. So this model right now is all about reasoning rather than, giving real-time updates or, working with your images and like PDF files. No, it's not going to focus on that. Right now, the focus is just on taking time to really reason and to really think through those chain of thought processes before it actually comes up with the best possible answer. Let's look at a simple coding problem and compare GPT-4o versus OpenAI O1 preview. So let's ask a simple question to write a bash script that takes a matrix represented as a string, format 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and prints the transpose in the same format. Now, this is a question these days can be solved by quite a few models like Claude 3.5. So I would expect that OpenAI O1 doesn't have any problem with this. So with GPT-4o, we got the script and it also gives the instruction as to how we have to run the script and the output that we can expect. With OpenAI O1, similarly, we get the script, but here we can see that there's a show chain of thought button. If we click on that, then it shows its reasoning, and we have to remember that this is the summary of the chain of thought. This is not the actual chain of thought that literally the model is going through, but it's just a summary. But we can see that how the model goes through it. It says, let's first understand the input and output formats, which correspond to a matrix. So the input is a series of rows, each in brackets separated by commas. So the requested output is like this, and the overall task is to write a bash script that takes one argument and outputs is transpose in the same format. It goes on and on about the reasoning, and then finally it gives the script for us. And towards the end, it also gives us the instruction how to execute the script and also the output that we can expect from the script. On a simple task like this, it's quite good. But let's move on to a much more challenging task, which is the crossword puzzle. This we know that is something that is more challenging. So let's give a crossword and let's give the across and down hints in order to solve this. So with GPT-4o, the solution that it has come up with is not the real solution, as in like it has in no way that it can actually solve this puzzle. Because it involves complex reasoning, GPT-4o clearly struggles with this task. But in case of OpenAI O1 preview, we can see that it goes through chain of thought process. The chain of thought is that we are asked to solve this crossword puzzle. Let's make sense of the grid. Then it starts looking into the grid. It makes sense of this one. And then the actual clues are the words across and down. And now it says, first, let's try to number the squares properly. I think in such grids, the numbers are the starting squares of entries. It's extremely clear as to how the model approaches this problem. Then it says, given the grid, blah, blah, blah. And then the down entries, the numbers in the first row correspond to the down entries. But the eventual answer is what is impressive when it comes to OpenAI O1 preview. It literally comes up with the answer, and you can see that for each of the rows, it literally reasons about it. So with the coding task, what they did was they let the model participate in International Olympiad in Informatics. It's basically a competition where you submit solutions programmatically and then you compete with others. So the model competed in the 2024 International Olympiad in Informatics under the same conditions as human contestants. And for each of the problems, the system sampled and submitted 50 of them based on test time selection strategy. So they basically involved some kind of a test time selection strategy and submitted 50 of the solutions that the model came up with. So they were selected based on the public test case score and the model generated test cases, which were tested on the go, and a learned scoring function. The scoring function was also learned by the model, if I understand right, just on the go, basically. So they are saying that if they had just submitted a random submission, then it would have only scored 156 points, but it managed to get 213 points. And they also say that the model participated in the competitive programming contest hosted by Codeforces to demonstrate the model's coding skills. And the evaluations clearly indicate O1 preview is in the 62nd percentile compared to GPT-4o in just 11th percentile. And we haven't even looked into O1 yet and O1 IOI. So that's a significant leap from GPT-4o when it comes to coding. Let's look at another example, this time with health science. We are giving a list of phenotypes for diagnosis, and we're also giving excluded phenotypes, and we try to diagnose what the most likely diagnosis could be. And the GPT-4o comes up with CDLS. All I can say is that OpenAI O1 takes exactly the same input and it gives its chain of thought, and eventually it comes up with a different answer and says that it's KBG syndrome. So I'm not sure which one is the right answers, but this is something that the model has now come up with after a significant thought given to the complicated problem and also going through a chain of thought process, which can be inspected if we go under the chain of thought and then look into the reasoning that it goes through in order to come up with this answer. On top of the O1 preview model, they've also released the OpenAI O1 mini, and they say that this mini model is to offer efficient solution for developers in order to help the developers for faster, cheaper, and reasoning model that's particularly effective at coding. So it is a smaller model, and O1 mini is 80% cheaper than the O1 preview, and making it a cost-effective model for applications that require reasoning but not broad world knowledge. So if you want a specialist model to do with coding, then you probably are looking into O1 mini. Even though O1 preview, they say somewhere that O1 preview is better at coding, but if you just want a specialist model at coding that is also much cheaper, then you're better off just going for O1 mini at this point in time, and probably wait for an upgrade or wait to hear back from OpenAI in order to decide which of the models that you want to actually use in the future. So having said that, like, how do we even go about using it? ChatGPT Plus users will be able to access the model in ChatGPT straight away. So in the dropdown, despite choosing GPT-4o, you should now be able to choose O1 preview and O1 mini. If you're not a paid user like me, then it'll ask you to upgrade before it actually shows you the option to choose OpenAI O1 preview or OpenAI O1 mini. You just have the option to use ChatGPT currently. So let's move on to some evaluations and look at human preference evaluation. This is where you show the response of two models to the users and find out what the users prefer out of the two models or out of the two responses. And they're saying that O1 preview is preferred to GPT-4o by a large margin in reasoning heavy categories like data analysis, coding, and math. So definitely, if it's data analysis that you're working on, or if you're doing math problems or coding problems, then you definitely have to switch to this model now over GPT-4o. They also confess that it's not preferred on some natural language tasks, suggesting that it's not well suited for all use cases. So it's not surprising, given that this is a reasoning model and your problem should involve good level of reasoning in order to go for this model. So moving on to evaluation on reasoning improvement over GPT-4o, they tested the model on diverse set of human exams and machine learning benchmarks, and they showed that O1 significantly outperforms GPT-4o. Because now the test time compute improves as we give it more time, they say that they set it to maximal test time compute setting in order to compare it with GPT-4o. So in the math competition, we can see that O1 accuracy is shot up heavily, and it's just the O1 preview performance itself is far higher than GPT-4o, and we haven't even seen the O1 model. And similarly, when it comes to competition, the code forces, the performance is shot up from 11 to 62nd percentile. In the PhD level science question answering, it has still gone from 56 to 78.3%, whereas the human expert is now a bit lower than the actual performance that we see from O1 preview. So this one basically shows the improvement just by introducing O1 for different benchmarks. With ML benchmarks, when it comes to math, we jump from 60.3 to 94.8, and similarly with MMLU. And there are quite a few other benchmarks. They show the performance leap with the new model. In most of the cases, we can see that the performance has actually been boosted, except for this one, where it's the AP English language, where the performance is still 58 in both the cases. So before they conclude, they say that they decided to hide the raw chain of thought after weighing multiple factors, including user experience, competitive advantage, and the option to pursue the chain of thought monitoring. we have decided not to show the raw chain of thought to users. We acknowledge that this decision has disadvantages. That's absolutely fine. You're inclined to keep your competitive advantage. So we totally get that. So they conclude by finally saying that O1 significantly advances the state of the art in AI reasoning, which we totally agree, as we can see from the evaluation results. And they're also planning to release improved versions of this model. And we cannot wait to sort of get our hands dirty with what is coming up with the advanced versions of this particular reasoning model. And in the appendix, they show some of the metrics that they have got when it comes to the new model. And they've just summarized basically the math scores, the coding score, and also the physics, biology, and chemistry scores. And in almost all of them, that the new model is now the reigning king and it dethrones the GPT-4o. But this gain comes with the compromise in time it takes to reason. So you have to give the model quite some time to reason before it comes up with the answer. But if you still want a quick model, then probably GPT-4o is a better model. But if you can wait to get the response, but a really good response, then probably O1 preview is the model that you need to go for, or probably the O1 when they actually is available. So with that, I'm pretty much wrapping up the review of the OpenAI's O1 model. So please let me know in the comments if you want me to play around with the model in the UI and then show some of the responses that we get for some of the challenges. Otherwise, I'm signing off and I will see you in my next video. Until then, take care.